Alright, so today I've got a bit of a special video prepared for you guys, because, as we all know, the match ended in the last chapter, with Isagi making a super goal and destroying PXG, and I thought why not compile the last 4 chapters and everything that led up to this insane goal, and make it into a video like I usually do. Also, don't worry, this is just a quick video, before my big video going over the entire match is dropping. It's almost done, but just a few little fixes left, so in the meantime I hope that you will enjoy this video. Don't forget to leave a like, comment, and of course subscribe to the channel. With that out of the way, let's get into it. We see Ness in just pure shock saying Rin's name. Under him we have Karasu, who is basically speaking nonsense at this point, but he's saying that all of the extraordinary players like Rin are getting him excited. Shidou is grinning left to right as he says that this is a red-hot counter, and then we see the ball falling towards Charles, who looks up with a manic expression while saying that this is PXG's grand finale, and tells them to go as he sends away the ball high up on the field. We then see Isagi, who looks mildly annoyed while thinking that Rin's play was totally unexpected, and he can't even begin to understand how Rin managed to stop them, as he and Kaiser had just improvised that chemical reaction, so how was it possible for Rin to see through it? Out of nowhere, however, Rin appears right on Isagi's side, kind of scaring him. Rin has lightning coming off his eyes as he says that he is sticking 4 meters to Isagi, explaining that he has already pounded all of Isagi's specs and physical abilities into his brain, and given his capabilities and Isagi's individual skills, Rin knows that he can effortlessly stop Isagi reflexively if he can stay within a radius of 4 meters. We also see what looks like some sort of bubble form around them, indicating the 4-meter radius. Rin keeps on going, and explains that he was waiting for the moment to use that to split up Isagi and Kaiser. He then starts to look like a demon as he gets his tongue out, and says that he waited for the fiery moment when the two of them would try to connect again. Isagi is staring at Rin, looking extremely pissed off, while in his head thinking that Rin is insane. He looks over and sees Tokimitsu and Ness passing around the ball and starts to wonder what to do. His meta-vision eyes get active, and he says that if Rin is sticking close to him, then he should maybe try and move away. However, he realizes that it's not possible either, because if he tries to force himself away, then he will have less freedom, and his coordination with Kaiser will suffer even more because of it. We then see that Isagi's puzzle pieces are starting to dissolve and disappear, while he says that if it were to happen, then the new bastard Munchen would be obliterated, then saying that here at the 11th hour, Rin has found a new motivation and is trying to change. Because of that, he snaps back into reality and says that he can't back down either, and with that realization, he goes into his god mode and tries to push himself even further as he is determined to win over Rin within this 4-meter space. Rin is looking over at Isagi and thinking that this is just what he wants. We see an eye starting to appear as Rin says that Isagi's thoughts, his freedom, dreams, mind, and all that's precious to him, Rin wants to destroy all of it. And this is the panel I was talking about in my leak video. Just look at how insane it looks, like it's a whole hand with an eye in the middle staring down both Rin and Isagi. Rin's new aura is really something in its own kind. Anyway, skipping away from it, we see Ness battling with Kiora while screaming to the PXG players that they have to win no matter what, and to continue passing even if it kills them. The ball goes to Karasu, who's in a battle of his own against Raichi, but he quickly sends it away to Zantetsu, calling him an overworked 4-eye, and that's kinda true as Zantetsu has really put in a shift in this game. But then, as he gets the pass, he starts to spout out nonsense as he says lactic acid linear motorcar dash, which I have no idea what that's supposed to mean, but sure. Bastard Munchen starts to panic, as Raichi says that they can't seem to stop PXG's attack, and Hiori says that they are already past the midfield. After that, it only gets more intense as the ball falls over to Charles, who actually traps it beautifully. He gets a smirk as he says, "Right there, lickety Rin," which I'm not even going to comment on. Anyway, he sees Rin and Isagi sprinting alongside each other, and decides to send away a one-shot killer pass towards them, which has an insane curve to it. However, to their surprise, the ball doesn't go to Rin, but instead to Shidou, who has his wings out as he flies up into the sky and gets the ball. Shidou says something in French, which gets translated to "I love you, contrarian," and I feel like Shidou just wants to catch a case at this point. Anyway, before him comes Kiora, who says not yet while still sliding, but it wasn't just Kiora, as suddenly Kunigami comes bashing into Shidou's body. He tells Shidou to just try and shoot and calls him a vermin. Shidou starts to smirk as he calls this a hot surprise, but to their own surprise, he says that he is a contrarian too, and actually passes away the ball. Both Kiora and Kunigami can't understand their eyes, as Shidou sent away the pass to none other than the monster Rin. Rin gets the ball, but it's everything from easy, as both he and Isagi are almost falling over while battling each other. Rin looks completely insane as he says it's time for their last battle. Isagi is in his own head and thinks that they are still over 35 meters from the goal and that it's still just too far for him to shoot. But if he makes it just a bit further, he'll be in range, which would mean that one wrong move would mean their death. Suddenly, Shidou comes from the side and asks for a pass, and he must be delusional, thinking that Rin would give back the pass. And Isagi is also aware of that, as he thinks that what Rin wants is to make the last shot while crashing into Isagi. They look at each other, and Isagi's pieces are slowly dissolving as he says that he's been a disposable pawn over and over again, and he then calls over Kaiser, who comes right away from the side. There's a highlighted spot on the ground, and Kaiser asks Rin if that's his crash shot point. He looks completely obsessed with stopping Rin, as he declares that he is butting the hell in. Isagi, who is looking at this, just says that Kaiser is the best, but this is where everything changes, as out of nowhere Rin calls it tepid, and says that he's been waiting for that fire, which shocks Kaiser. But right here we also see Rin's new hand aura appearing around him, and Isagi and Kaiser are just speechless, wondering what Rin is going to do. But then it clicks for Isagi, as he says that Rin had already read their coordination, and that it wasn't Isagi who he wanted to crash into, but instead Kaiser, which we see here as Rin pushes his whole body into Kaiser's and collides with each other. While having his hand completely around the two of them, almost consuming them, as Rin is bashing into Kaiser, he says Isagi's name, and that destroying his ultimate fire is Rin's ultimate pleasure. However, while we see Kaiser almost being turned upside down, we see some sort of rose starting to appear, and we hear Kaiser apologizing, but not to Isagi, but instead to Rin, as he has grabbed hold of Rin's shoulder and says that when it comes to physical contact, he's been taking the special course since he was a kid. Rin looks back and is in total awe by this as he realizes that Kaiser is going to make a mid-air rotation. Kaiser's face gets filled with a shadow as he says that he is a piece of shit and that he has had a way worse upbringing than those humans. And as he says that, he gets somewhat down to the ground and shoots away the ball from Rin and into his hand aura and completely destroys it. Isagi is ecstatic as he watches from the side and asks Kaiser if he is some sort of god before calling him a superstar. Even the commentators compliment Kaiser's defense as they say that he defended the goal with an acrobatic clear. However, right after that, both he and Rin fell down to the ground, but they looked like wild beasts as they got up in an instant. Isagi, who's behind them, thinks that just with him reading the situation, he ended up completely losing to Rin. Kaiser screams that he will get the next one, and Rin just calls him a shitty rose. Isagi has his meta vision out as he looks back and thinks that Kaiser was able to awaken abilities that he didn't know of. After that, we get to Kaiser, who's behind him, who says that the shitty past that he hated, surprisingly, gains meaning and acceptance, saying that this is the first time he's ever felt this feeling. After that, we see that the soaring ball falls towards Yukimiya, who jumps up to trap it while having Charles behind him. As he has the ball, he looks at Kaiser and says that new aspects keep showing up in Kaiser's play, and that he's just like how Yukimiya was back then, saying that when playing with Isagi, one's current self just won't do, explaining that if you don't change, then you won't be needed. And then we see him go absolutely mental on the pitch as he dribbles past multiple PXG defenders. He thinks back to some of his memories and says that you then have to confront your past self and want to find your ego again, thinking back to his goal and saying that people standing on the same field as Isagi, that's their privilege and cruelty. After that, his eyes start to light up with some sort of flame as he's just getting more and more pumped. Yukimiya gets towards Tokimitsu, who first looks ready to take Yukimiya on, but it all ends with him being completely embarrassed by Yukimiya, who makes a roulette dribble behind him as he says that those who can't become new will end up disappearing into the void. Right after Tokimitsu, he faces some new troubles right off the bat as he sees both Zantetsu and Nanase standing right in front of him. Both of them go to press Yukimiya, but somehow Yukimiya still manages to keep steady control over the ball. After that, he starts to smile as he says that here comes the sinking ship and says that he won't disappear. And as Nanase and Zantetsu start pressing harder and harder, Yukimiya manages to get off a pass towards Hiori, who traps it flawlessly. Hiori, just like Yukimiya, looks absolutely insane and absorbed in this game as his eyes are burning with an intense fire. Hiori thinks that Yukimiya is right and that they are egoists who died once and got brought back to life by Isagi. Then he also starts to go absolutely mental on the pitch as he's like the wind as he's getting past the PXG defenders while saying that Isagi doesn't want their gratitude. He thinks back to some earlier moments and says that if you have faith in yourself, renew yourself, and get your life back, then that will be totally okay. which is what Hiori did as he renewed himself together with Isagi in the Ubers game, and then, because of that, found his spark. After that, as he's running down the field, he starts to get some sort of weird aura around himself. It's like Isagi's puzzle pieces aura. However, instead of puzzle pieces, it looks like glass shards, which I don't know why it's glass shards, but it looks super dope, so who cares? Anyway, alongside his glass shards, he says that he's here because that's what Isagi taught him, saying that Isagi is the center of this team. But even then, nobody here is fighting for his sake. He looks ahead of himself and sees Isagi before him, and says that everyone feels like they're the protagonists themselves, and that they are exposing their own egos. Hiori says that this is Isagi's magic, and that the source of this team's strength. However, we then leave the Glaze Master Hiori, and move on to Isagi, who's a bit ahead of him. He thinks that he can't read the awakening of a genius. He looks frustrated with his meta vision eyes out, as he says that just now Kaiser used his own specs to the fullest against Rin, and adapted faster than anyone. And with that in mind, he's figured out what the most important thing for talented learners is, and that the awareness of being faster than anyone. We then see a huge shiny puzzle piece with the word fastest written on it. Isagi knows that they don't have stunning sensibility like the geniuses, but they can understand what's needed for the world by their brains. He then takes a big step on a couple of puzzle pieces and says that if that's the case, then find it. The path to victory is connected to luck and the awakenings and mistakes occurring on the field. Isagi then once again goes into his unbelievable god mode and has pieces flowing around him while explaining that if designed faster than anyone else, this one attack will become originality that pierces the world, and I don't know why, but that just goes so insanely hard. After that, we get to the Master Glazer again, who's still completely locked in as he says that here comes the super sadistic pass. He says both Isagi's and Kaiser's names and says that it doesn't matter which one of them it is, but that he will send the best pass that he can dream of, telling them to come and get it if they want it. But just as Hiori is getting into passing position, someone comes before him and calls it a fire. It's none other than Hiori's old buddy Karasu, who has a big smirk on himself while telling Hiori to go while calling him a dumbass. Hiori is just in pure shock that Karasu was able to come here and calls him a nuisance. Karasu looks completely insane as he has a big crow behind him, as he says that getting to fight Hiori in a place like this is getting him excited, as he asks Hiori if he's ordinary or not. Hiori thinks back to when he first met Karasu, but gets interrupted as Karasu tells him to show him what he's got. Hiori looks frozen, but knows that if he can't beat him, then the neo-egoist won't be born, and with that, both of them rush towards each other to try and win. Karasu has his crow feathers behind him, while Hiori's side is filled with glass shards. Anyway, as they are going at it, we see both Kaiser and Isagi running side by side with each other to try and get into the best position possible. But behind them, we have Ness, who can't really form any words, but we see that he looks completely furious and almost creepy as he's watching them from behind. We then see Kaiser's face where he looks super annoyed while thinking that he knew that Rin was going to come here and says that he's gone all in on trying to stop them. Kaiser takes his hand before Rin's body, and Rin does the same to Kaiser to try and stop each other a bit. Kaiser is still a bit mad at Rin for trying to destroy his coordination along with Isagi, and he calls Rin a monster of destruction, but this makes it glass clear for Kaiser that to be able to score a goal, they have to be able to overcome his greed. Right then, Isagi runs up on Kaiser's left side, and Kaiser looks over and thinks that if Rin cuts off his coordination with Isagi, then it's over for good. So to try and prevent that, Kaiser needs to stay aware of his position relative to the last passer. After that, we see Isagi completely making a sprint for it as he runs before them. Kaiser thinks that this is just what they need, and with a cross run, they'll be able to confuse Rin and disrupt his field of vision, saying that the best thing that they can do is head towards the goal and force him into choosing one of them to destroy. After that, Rin has gotten in the middle of them, and we can see that Kaiser and Isagi are beginning to start sprinting diagonally. Anyway, Kaiser says that luck will come to whoever he doesn't choose, and that they are feeling the same conclusion even without words. Kaiser looks over to Isagi and thinks that they are thinking on the exact same level. After that, we see Isagi, who's completely locked in, and even has some sort of lightning come out of his eyes, as Kaiser says that Isagi is in the ideal spot. But he then realizes that this is just football with Isagi after all, as he is a literal goat, saying that it's fascinating, but not only that, as he says that, it's extremely fun. After that, their plan gets into action as Kaiser and Isagi starts to cross-run with each other, which we can see leaves Rin a bit confused on what he should do. We then see Kaiser looking extremely determined with his metavision eyes out, as he says that with this one attack, he will become the emperor of the new dimension. which I'm not gonna lie, but it sounds extremely cold. But then, as Isagi and Kaiser are going absolutely insane on the field, we get to someone who isn't that involved right now, which is of course Ness, who we can see is desperately running behind them to try and catch up. He has a scared and worried expression on his face as he thinks that he is no longer needed. He thinks back to Kaiser's heartbreaking words when he told Ness to give up on soccer. He then says that Isagi stole his Kaiser, which now Ness just sounds like an insane stalker. However, as he is running, it gets dark around him and he wonders what he should do and if he also has to change. He thinks about when Kaiser called him a pig in this match. But he also thinks back to the first time that they met, which was like a blessing for Ness. Not to mention their academy time together, which Ness really treasures. He thinks about how Kaiser almost casted a spell on him in that tryout match. Anyway, right here we also see that some sort of aura is starting to once again form around Ness, which can only mean one thing, which is that he is getting back in the game. We then see that his aura is almost like fireballs, and we also see one ball with Kaiser in it, which is starting to disappear because Ness thinks that if Kaiser doesn't need him anymore, and if Kaiser would rather have a fresh start than to work with someone like Ness, then he will change too. He then says the heartbreaking words, which is a goodbye to Kaiser. His eyes then starts to absolutely fire up with determination and probably excitement, as he also says goodbye to the Ness, who believed that he would become the best in the world alongside Kaiser. And as he takes that step, his aura just starts to completely fire up, and it looks insanely cool as he now has abounded everything and is finally a player that can hopefully stand on his own, but it's too early to say. But I now have big hopes for him. Anyway, we then see both Hiori and Karasu, who's in a bit of a duel with each other, as Hiori tries to get around him, but Karasu is following him closely and even asks Hiori if this is all that he's got. However, Hiori fires back and says that it applies to Karasu as well, and tells him to just try and steal away the ball. After that, Hiori's eyes switch to meta vision mode as he looks over to Kaiser and Isagi, and thinks that they are now in his range, and that all that's left is to get the perfect timing. After that, we see Rin, who's frustrated as he's in the middle of both Kaiser and Isagi and is getting sandwiched to the max. Rin has then realized that if he covers one of them, then the other one will move ahead just like a seesaw, and says that he can only destroy one of them. He looks at both of them and says that he needs to gamble on who he wants to destroy. After that, Hiori says now, and he stops the ball before passing a short pass to himself, which he is able to catch up to, and with that, get behind Karasu, who's just in pure awe by this. It also reminds me a bit of Chigiri's play in the first selection, but a lot smaller. Rin now knows that the attack is incoming and wonders if he should stop Isagi or the shitty Rose, but in reality, there's no need to think about it, as Rin obviously goes to destroy his long rival Isagi and completely bashes into him while saying that he is the one that Rin wants to annihilate. Isagi just calls him a beast and is a bit annoyed that he went for Isagi. Anyway, Hiori got away with a killer cross, as we then see that he completely tricked Rin, as the ball isn't going to Isagi, but instead to Kaiser, who looks to be completely free right now. Kaiser's eyes are glued to the incoming ball and thinks that it's coming at a rapid speed. He gets out his furious predator eyes and just says, "Luck," but then the annoying demon comes in his way to unnecessarily prolong this game even more, as he comes in with his devilish wings and says that he saw him coming from a mile away and calls him a loser. Kaiser is just in shock by this, and Shidou just looks like a maniac like always, as he says that if Rin didn't choose to go for him, then he knew that it meant that Shidou was all free to go and hunt him down. After that, Kaiser tries to get the ball but he fails, and Shidou heads away the ball and tells him that it was bad luck. Both Isagi and Kaiser looks like they have just frozen in place as they are following the bouncing ball to see where it goes. However, unfortunately, we see Charles making a run for the ball as he compliments both Rin and Shidou. He then, just like Shidou, looks completely insane as he tells them to go and for them to start another killer counter, wanting this game to finish in 2028. However, to stop that, we see Kunigami, who looks completely wild as he tells Charles that it's over yet and calls him a brat as he jumps and heads away the ball while saying that he is still here. Charles looks at him from above and is just in pure amazement that Kunigami was able to head it away. Kunigami then says that this just leaves it to fate as the ball soars high up into the sky. Isagi just looks at him and says, "Hero." Anyway, we see the ball being in the middle of the battle royale as everyone has their eyes on it. We see both Rin and Kaiser looking completely wild as they have lightning coming out of their eyes. And not to mention that we see Isagi starting to enter his god mode, which I'm sure is hyped for. However, as you are looking at this panel, you realize that Ness is nowhere to be seen, which is kind of weird, but they might be keeping him hidden for now, as instead of Ness, we see Yukimiya coming in from the sidelines to try and join the showdown. Down at the bottom of the panel, we also see a huge puzzle piece with the word luck written on it. We get a close-up of Rin, who looks demonic. We also see Charles, who looks shocked, while Kunigami looks a bit frustrated and annoyed. After that, we see who's been chosen and who will have luck on their side today, and it's none other than the magician Alexis Ness, who the ball falls perfectly down to. He looks at the incoming ball with big eyes as he knows that this is his chance at redemption. After that, we see Isagi in his god mode, as well as Kaiser, both looking at Ness with a mix of shock, but also anticipation. After that, Kaiser gets a bit of a furious look in his eyes, as he questions why the ball falls to Ness at times like this, also calling him a puppy. However, Ness is too fixated on the incoming ball to worry about anything. Ness has, his eyes are practically glued to it, and we also see that the fire in his eyes begins to once again light up, as he says that luck has finally come. But with such a big opportunity at hand, he wonders what he should do. His brain starts to work overtime as he thinks about maybe setting up a pass towards Kaiser, but he then grinds his teeth together and calls himself an idiot, as he very well knows that he can't do that, as this is his chance to change. Even so, Ness isn't the only one who's thinking about this, as we see Kaiser, who's battling with Shidou, and wonders what Ness is going to do. He wonders if Ness is going to shoot, but he quickly throws that idea away, as he calls it impossible, as Kaiser is in his own head. We see that a mysterious player is beginning to sprint and make his way towards the goal silently, and I think we can all guess who that is. Anyway, back to Ness, who looks super confused as he has too many options to choose from. He thinks about shooting, but he knows how much Kaiser is anticipating a pass from him, but as he sees the ball in the sky, it gets glass clear for him, as he says that he'll cast a new spell on this field, and as he says that, his entire aura changes, and it gets super intense as it's like real magic flowing all around him. He gets more intense as he says that up until now, he's only made passes that made it easy for Kaiser to shoot, but this time, Ness has decided to throw all of that to the side, as he doesn't want to feel restricted anymore, as he looks intensely at the ball, and says that this is his first rebellion, and that Ness will now declare his war towards the new emperor, and then he fires off this absolutely out of this world looking pass, while telling everyone that if you are the best in the world, then come and steal it. We see Charles, who tried to jump up and head away, but he was too short to even be close to reaching it. Reichi first thought that Ness shot the ball by himself, but as Nanasi is looking closely at the ball, he sees that it's a drive pass and that its direction is changing. Ness looks like a demon as his eyes are filled with eternal darkness, as he says that this pass has topspin to it and that it's not suited for a Kaiser impact, explaining that he kicked it past the defenders and timed it perfectly. As Ness is following his pass with his eyes, he sees that Kaiser has managed to almost escape from Shidou and is heading towards the ball with an insane determination, as he even has lightning coming out of his eyes. Ness then looks happy as he thinks that if Kaiser is there, then just maybe the two of them can try all over again, and maybe they can once again become a team. But that's not how the story will go, as we see at the bottom. We see a small panel of Isagi before moving on to a big panel of him sprinting with all that he can towards the ball, while being in his god mode and having his puzzle pieces going absolutely wild around him. Ness sees this and is shocked as it looks like his eyes are almost about to pop out of his face as he sees his passing growing closer to Isagi. But it's not only Ness who's shocked all the way to his core, as Karasu can't believe his eyes and asks if Ness planned this pass towards Isagi and thinks that it's too unexpected. Hiori by his side looks absorbed by this attack and says that Karasu is wrong and that nobody on the field, including himself, could have expected the genius known as Ness to have such a sudden mutated awakening, but still there was only one person who believed in him equally and ran there faster than anyone else and managed to adapt to the changing Ness. We then see that Isagi is far ahead of Kaiser, which means that Kaiser is out of the picture for now. We also see Yukimiya, who's looking over and says that right to the end, he killed his feelings and kept selling his soul for victory. Kunigami to the left just looks at Isagi with an angry and frustrated face as he calls him an egoist machine. If that wasn't bad enough, then we also see Isagi's sworn rival Rin, who tries to stick his hand out to stop Isagi, but he's too far away to even be able to reach him, and Rin is just in pure shock to how Isagi is able to undergo another evolution. As he looks at Isagi coming closer to the ball and seeing his chances of beating him slowly fading away, he says that Isagi has the charisma to draw out others' egos and exploit them for his own goals. This leaves Rin with a lost and defeated look on himself. Meanwhile, Kaiser under him just looks furious like he's about to kill someone, and I fear that it might be Ness as Kaiser screams his name with all the power that he can and looks like he's about to jump Ness after this game. Ness is just as confused about what has happened as he looks like a straight up zombie, and I low-key feel bad for him. Isagi starts getting into shooting position, and Rin, once again watching him, says that Isagi is hatching, and says that a brand new and perfect Isagi Yoichi is being born, as he's controlling hope and despair in this neo-egoist league. And then as he says that, Isagi fires off his outstanding and mind-blowing shot, and as he does that, his signature Glocks appear on his side. As the ball is going towards the goal at a rapid speed, we see some puzzle pieces around the ball. They're different moments from this game, and some of them are when Isagi comforted Igarashi after he got subbed out, also when Isagi entered his first god mode, but also when he realized that Noah used him, and lastly my favorite part of this game, where he went to Noah and straight up declared war towards him. Anyway, back to the action where we see the goalkeeper getting ready and throwing himself to the side to try and reach the ball. We see Igarashi, Noah, and Loki all looking shocked to their core as this is going on. However, unfortunately for PXG, the goalkeeper wasn't able to reach the ball, which led to it going straight into the net and giving bastard Munchen their third goal. Rin looks at this while scratching his teeth as he calls Isagi the Demon King, but Isagi just rushes away in pure happiness before he kneels and slides onto the ground, making this awesome looking celebration. And with that, Isagi Yoichi has once again become the hero of Blue Lock, as he made bastard Munchen into the only undefeated team in the Neo-Egoist League.